Since Iron Man debuted in 2008, Marvel Studios has been blowing out the competition, and what started out as only 2 to 3 movies per year has now been elevated to an insane amount of content, averaging around 10 projects per year. Think about it, from 2008 through 2019, they've released 23 projects in total, and after 2022, we will have received about 19 to 20 projects just in Phase 4 alone. And this is a huge thank you to Disney Plus, where Marvel promised an ever-growing and expanding universe just as rich as the Marvel movies. But does it deliver? Let's discuss. What's going on, everyone? It's Semp. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, just like Marvel, the MCU comics, and everything in between, subscribe to the channel. We're closing on that 1K sub mark, which is really awesome, but enough of that. I wanted to discuss today why the Marvel Disney Plus shows will never be better than the movies. Now, first of all, I do just want to say that I love all of these. In fact, WandaVision and Loki are both right in or outside of my top 10 in the overall MCU ranking. But that isn't to say that they don't have flaws, especially What If, and so today I want to see if anyone else shares these not necessarily concerns, but questions that I do have moving forward. Marvel Studios' catchphrase for the new shows was "the universe is expanding," and these shows are everything that the movies are supposed to be without the oomph. They're filmed like movies, they have movie budgets, they have some minor cameo connections, but something about them doesn't make everything feel as connected as they should be. And honestly, you can argue the shows are more standalone rather than truly enriching the MCU expansion. The new shows do a fantastic job of fleshing out the story, but they are not the main story. Now, what I mean by this is they will enhance your experience of watching the MCU, but they will not dictate the MCU experience. Marvel Studios wants these shows to be huge, but they don't want the movies to suffer for the casual moviegoer. And so even though some shows were elevated more than others, it still seems like they won't let themselves go all out in the shows. It always seems like there's just one thing missing: the oomph of every series. These new shows are like solo comic book runs, and for what they are, like I've said, I love them. I think the expectation, especially starting out with our first show, WandaVision, was to treat them exactly like the movies, but then the No Doctor Strange appearance pulled everyone back. And I think it made them say, okay, well maybe let's just settle down, and so after a full year and 5 Disney Plus projects, I think we know what to expect by now. Let's be real, there are going to be no true massive stakes, if any. I remember some people speculating whether Renner would die in Hawkeye, and I can't even begin to explain how that will never ever even come close to happening. Now maybe I'm wrong in a couple years, but they for sure won't kill off a huge member, let alone an OG 6 Avenger. And so once again, that comes back to the we want them to be as important as the movies, but they technically aren't, because events like this will never happen in the shows, so the scale is already capped to a certain degree, and so when you go into the show, already you know that there's a certain ceiling that it'll never go above. If you think about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it has some of the most powerful scenes and visually looks fantastic. Kerry Skoglund did a great job, but you could also low-key skip that series if you wanted to, and still understand that corner of the MCU. US Agent could have been shoehorned into a movie the same way Crossbones was a side character in the Captain America trilogy. Val was in another movie, Black Widow, already. Bucky really just makes amends with himself in the show, which by the way is fantastic character growth, but technically it's not necessary to see. And then of course Sam gets the shield after Endgame, so you can insinuate what would happen and he would take up the mantle. So once again, this enhances the story, but it doesn't dictate the story for the MCU overall. Very little is truly introduced if you think about it, besides a lackluster Sharon storyline in a new city. Zemo was also great, but off-screen things could have been explained where he was for a future movie. So yes, they are connected, they deepen the lore, but is that all that they do? I thought Loki was fantastic, and it truly feels like a full universe event, until you realize it kind of doesn't. Sure, we saw what happened, we might get a reference to it, but don't let it fool you that No Way Home and Doctor Strange 2 will be the main contributors to the multiversal collapse, and not necessarily what happened in the Loki show. From that Loki finale, we won't ever see He Who Remains again, which of course is fine and makes sense, but in totality I'm very curious to see how far they go with Kang in general. And all those tie-ins to Ant-Man 3 and so forth, even little references to the threshold being crossed, will Strange even refer to this event in his movie. Now I'm jumping the gun here because we obviously haven't seen it yet, and my god am I extremely hyped for Doctor Strange 2. But the trailer kind of already gave us a meme and proved to us that a lot of what happens in the events of WandaVision will just be completely skimmed over in the movie and not really talked about. So if you saw the show, great, you have all the details, but if you didn't, no worries apparently, which is lackluster to the fans who watch everything. Now being that it is Strange's movie, I'm fine with that, but I do love all the interconnectivity, and so I kinda hope they really start to blend these Disney Plus stories together. There's rumors Wiccan and Speed will appear again, so I think overall in 2022 and 23 we'll start to see how truly important the shows are, and if they are completely essential to the story or if they're just story enhancers. If we're strictly talking about enhancing the story, and that is all that we're going into these shows for, then that's all we can really ask for. But I want to watch a show and be able to get surprised by something other than a villain reveal. And that's kind of where we get into format. The shows, I think, need to stay a little bit more concise and get to the point. It kind of feels like each show is always 1 to 2 storylines overboard or 1 to 2 episodes short. And so because of that, this was really prevalent in Hawkeye, and more specifically, mostly in the finales overall. There was a ton of scenes cut from Hawkeye, and yes, obviously some were unneeded, but others were cut for no reason, like a flashback to Clint's childhood. If we're doing a Disney Plus show that enhances the story of Clint Barton, and this is what you wouldn't be able to put in a movie, then why not put it into the show and make it add to his character's lore? This goes for Jack's character as well, because he's a red herring, and then boom, his entire character arc is just completely cut off, and then he disappears from the show. Now, it's likely we will have a season 2 of Hawkeye, but rather than a mystery of where he is, I still think it can't be overlooked that there should be some closing for him, and in fact there was, but it was also cut again, so why? The episode was already over an hour long, and that's why I don't know if this is fully Marvel Studios' fault or if it's Disney being annoying with their format. Another example is Wilson Fisk should have been brought into the Hawkeye series way earlier. Through deleted scenes we know it was supposed to happen, but they opted out for the last minute surprise. And yeah, it was cool, but it also pulls away character moments, and because we see no built-up tension between Maya and Fisk, that moment at the end of the finale is just a pure dud if you've never read that comic. Now, WandaVision and Loki worked great for mysteries, but Hawkeye and Falcon and Winter Soldier didn't, especially the Power Broker, so I think only some shows should have that element. A common complaint by the community lately is to toss everything out of the window, but format doesn't just mean get rid of 6-episode seasons, it means conform each show to the style they should be. WandaVision having 9 and almost 10 episodes was perfect, but shows like a tonally heavy Falcon and the Winter Soldier that has a ton of characters needed way more screen time than just 6 episodes. In fact, there's even quotes from Mackie himself calling it an 8-hour series, and the director and writer saying they pitched it as a 10 or more episode season, and so when you have to crunch it down so much, things get lost, and of course COVID played a factor in this as well, but still. There shouldn't be a set format for every single show, and so the shows should dictate the format rather than the format dictating how the story goes. And don't get me wrong, this is a problem for a lot of other shows. Even as good as Daredevil was, the 13 episodes for every single season kind of made it feel like it dragged at times, and there were a lot of things that you could possibly cut out. If it were my decision, I really think that 8 episodes, at most 10, is the absolute sweet spot for these series, but what do I know? Like I said, don't get me wrong, I absolutely can't wait for She-Hulk and Moon Knight and everything else, because so far it seems like they are going for something different with Moon Knight, and She-Hulk is rumored to have 10 episodes, so that's cool as well. Look, I get it, I respect it, and I understand the logistics of not wanting to put the biggest storylines behind a paywall, but then again, you gotta pay for the movies as well, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. And in the end, I guess all I'm trying to say is I really do like these, they're so enjoyable, it's a ton of fun with the community, and that's all a fan could really ask for. But it is okay to have chats like this also because nothing is perfect. I do want to see if they go a little bit further and take it to the next level with no restrictions to shock everyone, and let that not just be through a villain reveal, but a death or a crazy connection to a movie Easter egg, really anything to shake things up. I know some people don't like seeing Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars shows, but I've really liked what they've done so far with The Mandalorian and Boba Fett, so things like that are cool and it is what fans want to see. So let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. I'm just trying to give my side of this conversation that has been a topic of discussion since the Hawkeye finale released. So tell me, are you a bigger fan of the movies or the show so far? Follow me on Twitter at AnotherMarvelG for all daily news and updates. Drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel for all MCU movies, Disney Plus show coverage, and more. And other than that, I just want to say thank you. I'm another Marvel guy, and I'll catch y'all on the blip.